after. Let's bring in Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California. He served as an manager for Trump's second impeachment trial. And Congressman, it's been clear for more than a year now that ultra-conservative members of Congress were deeply involved in attempts to keep Donald Trump in power. But in a court filing and in text messages obtained by CNN, new pieces of evidence have emerged that flesh out the degree of their involvement with the Trump White House in strategy sessions. Help us understand how you see these new revelations and how they fit into the story we already know about the attempts to keep Trump in office.
Thank you, Zerlina, for your question. As a former prosecutor, it's very clear to me that the insurrection is illegal. The attack on the Capitol is a violation of multiple federal laws. And if you help plan the insurrection, if you help participate in the conspiracy, then you can also be criminally liable. And no one should be above the law in the United States of America. And that includes members of Congress. And I hope the Department of Justice will look at the actions of members of Congress that day, plus in the days leading up to January 6th.
So do you think that the January 6th committee should subpoena the members of Congress who appear in these text messages? And in addition, should they be a part of that DOJ investigation you just mentioned?
My understanding is the January 6th committee is going to ask these members of Congress to provide information voluntarily. If the January 6th committee believes that this information is important and the members of Congress are not willing to provide that information, then yes, I believe they should be subpoenaed.
Do you see evidence of a conspiracy in these text messages? I mean, lay out the case as you see it.
Well, let me first say what really struck me are the multiple text messages from Republican members of Congress and Trump's inner circle desperately texting Mark Meadows saying, please have the president stop this. Have him tell the people to go home. Please stop this. And two things struck me. One is the president did not stop anything for hours and hours and hours, and we need to find out why. And second, why would these people text Mark Meadows and ask the president to stop this? It's because they knew the president started their insurrection. That's why they're asking him to stop it, because they knew who was at fault. And my hope is that the Department of Justice looks at everyone who's responsible, not just the people that attacked the Capitol, but the people that did the inciting, including not only a former president, but potentially members of Congress.
I want to play a bit of more sound from Kevin McCarthy in the days after the insurrection. That's what struck me. There were so many of these texts that occur after the violence has taken place. Here he is with Congressman Steve Scalise discussing another Congressman, Matt Gaetz, on a GOP leadership call.
This is serious to cut this out. Yeah, that's I mean, it's potentially illegal what he's doing. Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people came prepared with rope, with everything else.
Congressman, if McCarthy assumed violence was a possibility, then how does that represent a consciousness of guilt in your view? Does that implicate him at all in the larger conspiracy itself?
Well, let me first say that further political violence remains a possibility, and I again urge Republican leadership to say one simple, truthful sentence that will reduce the risk of further political violence, and that's this: the election was not stolen. If they simply say that to their supporters, that will reduce the risk of further violence. And I think what these tapes show is that Leader McCarthy knew the truth. He told the truth for a hot second, and now he's backtracked. And what this also shows is that there's only one reality. It's just that many Republicans are lying about it.
Why do you think they're lying? Why did Kevin McCarthy change his tune and say the opposite thing when he was standing in front of a camera and a microphone to what we're hearing on these tapes and what we're seeing in these texts?
My view is that he is putting party above country. He is trying to attain power at all costs. He doesn't care if his members are engaging in dangerous or reckless behavior. He did care for a few days, as you saw on the tapes, and then he did nothing. And you continue to see reckless and dangerous behavior from current members of the Republican Party, members like Madison Cawthorn. And again, he is doing nothing.
So back in the summer of 1973, the Select Committee investigating Watergate broadcasted those hearings live on television and helped really shift public opinion enough that Nixon was forced to resign. Do you believe these hearings will be successful, and what does success look like in your view?
It's certainly possible that the January 6th committee hearings could shift public opinion. Members of the public are very busy. Many people don't pay attention to politics. They have to make sure they get food on the table, and they have their busy lives to attend to. So having televised hearings, I think, is very important to tell the truth of what happened on January 6th, including the events that led up to it, as well as the events afterwards, and to really point out to American people that this was a big lie. The election was not stolen. In fact, it wasn't even particularly close. The former president got crushed in the popular vote by over 7 million votes, and he lost multiple swing states: Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona. And for the Republicans to continue to perpetuate this big lie led to this attack on our Capitol, and that can never happen again.
Do you hope the committee emphasizes the ongoing threat of political violence, as you put it, but also the ongoing threats to our democracy in these public hearings? Is that a message you hope the public can take away?
Absolutely. I want the public to understand that a former president tried to lie, steal, and cheat his way back to power. And thank goodness the Congress stood firm, the then vice president stood firm, the Department of Justice stood firm, and prevented him from doing so. But there were many people who participated in that coup attempt, and we need to lay out the story for the American people and know that they have a choice in November. They can support democracy, or they can support these crazy, reckless Republicans who continue to throw out the big lie and continue to say that it was somehow okay to try to not certify the election for the current president, Joe Biden.
Congressman Ted Lieu, thank you so much for being here. Please stay safe.